Organized crime is no longer a fringe activity conducted in the dark alleys of our cities. It has evolved into a globalized force, a shadow economy that mirrors the legitimate world of multinational corporations in its complexity, ambition, and reach.
You ask where they have their money from?
No, that's because it's like our concern, such as our concern is just what you want to buy.
These international crime syndicates operate like businesses with supply chains, human resources, and sophisticated financial strategies. They are not merely criminals, they are architects of a parallel system of power, one that thrives on corruption and instability, weaving itself into the very fabric of the nations it targets, creating what can only be described as a shadow state. This phenomenon is not confined to one region or one type of country. It is a global pandemic of criminality that connects the poppy fields of Afghanistan to the streets of London, and the cocaine labs of Colombia to the financial hubs of Europe. In this interconnected underworld, South Africa has emerged as a critical node. It is a country of immense potential, with a strategic location, a developed infrastructure, and a sophisticated banking system. Yet these very strengths have been twisted and exploited by global criminal networks. They see South Africa not just as a market, but as a strategic gateway to the African continent and beyond, a place to launder money, traffic illicit goods, and establish a secure operational base. The story of South Africa's battle with these syndicates is a stark illustration of how organized crime functions in the 21st century. The battle in South Africa is therefore a battle for its soul. To comprehend why South Africa has become such a fertile ground for international crime syndicates, one must look at its unique combination of geography, history, and economic infrastructure. Positioned at the southern tip of Africa, the country boasts extensive coastlines with modern deep-water ports in Durban, Cape Town, and Gqeberha. These ports are vital hubs for legitimate global trade, but their sheer volume of traffic and complex logistics also provide perfect cover for illicit activities. Containers filled with narcotics, illegal wildlife products, or counterfeit goods can be hidden amongst millions of legitimate shipments, making detection a monumental challenge for even the most dedicated customs officials, especially when those officials may be compromised. The country's economic sophistication is another powerful magnet. South Africa possesses the most advanced and integrated financial system on the continent, with strong connections to global markets. For a criminal enterprise, this is an invaluable asset. It offers a sophisticated environment for money laundering, allowing the dirty profits from drug trafficking or illegal mining to be cleaned and injected into the legitimate global economy. Ultimately, South Africa's appeal to these syndicates is its status as a hybrid nation. It is a country with one foot in the developed world and one in the developing world. This duality makes it the perfect environment for syndicates to operate with a degree of impunity they would not find in Europe or North America, while still enjoying access to the tools of global finance and logistics. The criminal landscape in South Africa is not dominated by a single entity, but is a complex ecosystem where various international syndicates have carved out their niches, often collaborating with local gangs to extend their reach. These are not disorganized thugs, they are transnational corporations of crime. Syndicates with origins in Nigeria, for instance, have established powerful networks specializing in drug trafficking, particularly cocaine and heroin, as well as sophisticated online fraud schemes. They leverage cultural and linguistic ties to build cells within communities, creating an intricate web that is notoriously difficult for law enforcement to penetrate, controlling distribution routes that span from South American producers to European consumers. But that's just one side of the story. Groups like Black Axe run elaborate online fraud schemes, romance scams, identity theft, and business email compromises that have stolen millions from unsuspecting victims worldwide. In 2022, an Interpol operation in Cape Town and Johannesburg led to several arrests, exposing the scale of their operations. These syndicates aren't just street gangs, they're part of a global criminal empire. Alongside them, Chinese triads Wo Xingwo, San Yian, and 14K first established themselves in South Africa in the 1980s. Their empire stretches across Johannesburg and Cape Town, built on extortion, drug trafficking, firearms smuggling, and counterfeit imports. One of their most notorious operations? The illegal abalone trade, stripping South African waters of this delicacy to feed black markets in Asia. The insatiable demand for rhino horn and abalone in parts of Asia has fueled a poaching crisis in South Africa, and triads often orchestrate the entire supply chain, from funding the poachers on the ground to smuggling the products out of the country. This was starkly illustrated by the August 2025 bust of a syndicate trafficking 964 rhino horns to Southeast Asia. Their operations are methodical, often using front businesses and corrupt officials to obtain fraudulent permits, demonstrating a deep understanding and exploitation of systemic weaknesses. This group brings a different kind of expertise, often more violent and militaristic in their approach. Far from home, Russian and Eastern European crime syndicates have also found fertile ground in South Africa. Their specialty: high-value crime, money laundering, diamond trafficking, arms smuggling, and sex trafficking. Front businesses like nightclubs and strip clubs mask their activities. Though less visible than others, these networks are tightly connected to global organized crime families, moving billions through South Africa's financial system. They are implicated in contract killings and the protection rackets that plague businesses in major urban centers like Johannesburg and Cape Town. Their activities contribute to the escalating violence and sense of lawlessness as they engage in turf wars not only with rival syndicates, but also with local gangs who are either absorbed into their structures or violently displaced. Pakistani syndicates have carved out their place by controlling the heroin pipeline. Trafficked from Afghanistan, heroin flows through South Africa before spreading across the continent. They're also involved in mandrax manufacturing, kidnappings for ransom, and extortion within expatriate communities. Their operations often stretch into neighboring Mozambique, making them a regional powerhouse in the drug trade. They are a multifaceted threat, adapting their strategies and forming unholy alliances to maximize profit and minimize risk, all at the expense of the South African state and its people. The most powerful weapon in the arsenal of any international crime syndicate is not a gun or a bomb, it is corruption. Without the ability to bribe, influence, and co-opt state officials, their large-scale operations would be impossible to sustain. In South Africa, corruption has become the fertile soil in which these criminal enterprises have taken deep root, growing to a point where they can challenge the authority of the state itself. They have systematically targeted and infiltrated key institutions, turning public servants into private assets. This rot extends from the lowest levels of bureaucracy to the highest echelons of political power, creating a system where justice is for sale and impunity can be bought. The claim by General Nalonla Mkhwanazi that senior officials are being controlled by drug cartels and business people speaks to this insidious process, where a public servant's loyalty is no longer to the state they serve, but to the criminal master who pays them. The consequence of this deep-seated corruption is the creation of a system that actively protects criminals while punishing those who dare to challenge them. Whistleblowers, honest police officers, and incorruptible prosecutors become targets. They face intimidation, demotion, or, in a growing number of cases, assassination. The period between 2023 and 2025 saw a frightening spike in such killings, sending a clear and brutal message to anyone considering standing in the way of the syndicates. Faced with a crisis that threatens the very stability of the nation, the South African government under President Cyril Ramaphosa has publicly acknowledged the gravity of the organized crime threat and initiated several countermeasures. Since 2023, there has been a noticeable shift in rhetoric, with organized crime being framed as a matter of national security. This has been followed by tangible actions, including the establishment of new, specialized police units designed to focus specifically on syndicate-related crimes like illegal mining, drug trafficking, and extortion. These units are intended to be better resourced, better trained, and more insulated from the corruption that plagues the broader police service. In addition to domestic efforts, the government has sought to enhance its international cooperation. Recognizing that these syndicates are transnational, South Africa has increased its collaboration with global law enforcement agencies like Interpol and Europol. This involves sharing intelligence, coordinating cross-border investigations, and participating in joint operations. The arrest of foreign nationals linked to a global drug trafficking ring in Johannesburg in 2025, and the complex 7-year investigation that led to the August 2025 rhino horn bust, are examples of where this international partnership can yield significant results. The strategy is to attack the syndicates not just locally but at every point in their global network. However, these efforts face monumental challenges, and critics argue that the progress is painfully slow. The primary obstacle remains the deep-rooted corruption within the state. Establishing a new elite unit is of little use if its operational plans are leaked by compromised officials in higher command, or if its court cases are sabotaged by a corrupt judiciary. The government is attempting to fight a fire while a faction within its own house is pouring fuel on the flames. The sheer scale of the problem also means that law enforcement agencies remain chronically under-resourced and outgunned, struggling to police vast areas with limited personnel and equipment against criminals with military-grade weapons. The public declarations and new initiatives, while welcome, are often seen by a weary public as more symbolic than substantive. The cycle of high-profile announcements followed by limited real-world impact has bred a deep sense of cynicism. President Ramaphosa's promise of a full inquiry into the explosive allegations made by General Mkhwanazi is a critical test for his administration. If the inquiry is perceived as a genuine, transparent effort to root out corruption at the highest levels, it could begin to restore some public faith. If, however, it is seen as a political maneuver or a whitewash, it will only confirm the public's worst fears, that the state has lost control. South Africa stands at a critical juncture, facing a threat that is not merely criminal, but existential. The fight against organized crime cannot be won by the police alone, especially when elements of the police and political leadership are themselves compromised. The path forward requires a comprehensive and courageous national effort, a top-to-bottom reform that is as much about restoring integrity and rebuilding trust as it is about making arrests. This fight demands a multi-pronged strategy. It requires a relentless and transparent purge of corrupt officials at every level of government, no matter how high-ranking. It necessitates a massive investment in law enforcement to ensure that they are better trained, better paid, and better equipped than the criminals they face. Crucially, it must also address the root causes of crime: poverty, inequality, and unemployment, that create a steady supply of recruits for the syndicates. The future of South Africa hangs in the balance. It can either succumb to the pervasive influence of the shadow state, becoming a nation where criminal power rivals that of the government, or it can undertake the painful but necessary process of radical reform. The inquiry into the allegations against the country's top police leadership will be a powerful indicator of which path the nation will choose. For the sake of its people and the future of its democracy, the battle will be long and arduous, but it is a battle that must be won.